Grief is something that we will all experience in our lives. Probably you already have experienced some significant grief in your life, or you are in the middle of it now. It can be a hard emotion to understand, to process, to feel. And so today I want to talk about some signs that you have been avoiding grief and not properly processing it, and how that can be impacting your everyday life and creating problems in your everyday life without you even realizing it. And then some really important steps that you can start taking today to help you in your grief process. Before that, if you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you are back again, it is always good to have you. If you haven't already, introduce yourself in the comment section below. Special shout out to my shifters who are here today. And either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my incredible membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking this work to a deeper level. And there are absolutely people in there who are in grief, who are working through their grief, who are processing their grief, and as well as issues like depression and anxiety and self-esteem struggles and wanting to feel more clear, confident, and secure in who they are every day. Those are where the humans are doing this deeper work, is in the Shift Society. So you can get more information about that in the description below. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And unprocessed grief, unfaced or dealt with grief can definitely hold us back. Now, that said, for many among us, grief is not a quick process, and it's definitely not a linear process. There aren't these key steps that you go through one at a time, and once you've ticked them all off, then you're done. You don't have to grieve anymore. You don't have to feel the pain anymore. That is not how it works. Fortunately, unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, because it shows that we are feeling empathic, sensitive humans. When we lose something or someone important to us, it matters. Relationships matter. People matter. And our capacity for love is what makes being a human beautiful and at sometimes really brutal, but we take it all because that is part of the human experience, all of it. So when it comes to grief, it can be grieving the loss of a loved one. It can be grieving the loss of health through some kind of chronic illness or disability. It can be grieving the loss of a partner through divorce, the loss of a close friend through either relocation or alienation. It can be the loss of a job, basically anything or anyone that is or was important to us, and we don't have it anymore. And that's not necessarily what we want. Sometimes if we can get into complex grief, we can lose something that we don't want, but then there's part of us that still misses it, and that can get complicated. But regardless, the steps that I'm going to teach you are going to help with any kind of grief or loss that you are experiencing. Some of them, again, are going to be more relevant to the loss or the grief that comes through the loss of a loved one through death, but many of them are going to apply to all different kinds of loss. So how do we know? 5 signs that you are, actually, do we have 5 signs here? Yeah, we have 5 signs that you're not effectively dealing with your grief. And unprocessed, undealt with grief, like I said, can create bigger problems in our lives, which I'm going to talk about right now. So if you're not effectively dealing with your grief, then chances are you have a habit, or you've gotten yourself into a habit of some really intensive numbing behaviors. So maybe you notice yourself, or if you start to notice now, that you have been scrolling on social media way more than usual, just trying to kind of numb out, get out of your head, get out of your feelings, get out of whatever the painful thing is. Maybe you are binge watching TV until late into the night because you just want to feel something good, or maybe you just want to feel something other than the pain of the loss. Another numbing behavior can be binge eating, because eating fatty, sugary foods, the kinds we usually crave when we are feeling emotional, we are craving them because they release serotonin in the brain. They release a happy chemical. We're not doing it because we're suckers for punishment. We're doing it because we are humans who like to feel good. And in those first few moments of binge eating, it feels good until it doesn't. But our brains have convinced us that it is worth it to feel good in those few moments because we are grieving and just don't want to feel bad. And of course, the big one, substance abuse or misuse, over drinking, over drugging, just abusing substances, again, to numb or avoid. The next one is avoiding people. So that can be a really common behavior. If you are in grief, then you just don't want to deal with people. Maybe it's because you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to have to, try to be happy for other people so they're not asking you what's wrong or feeling bad for you. And then you're feeling guilty for bringing everyone down. And so you just don't want to really be around people, and you find yourself isolating a lot, which is probably, albeit you don't have to deal with that part of interaction, but it's probably making you feel more isolated, lonely, and thereby depressed because you are not being with the three-dimensional humans. So that is another really clear sign. Another sign is, the opposite of avoiding people is that you are actually having more conflict. Maybe with your partner, maybe with your kids, maybe with your friends. You find that your emotions are kind of right up at the tip of your throat because you are so full of the pain and the sadness that is filling up all of your emotional capacity. So you have little room left for anything extra, anything that's irritating you, annoying you, or inconveniencing you, or getting on your nerves, and it just comes out. You explode easily. You get irritated easily. You get angry easily. You lash out easily because there's all this unprocessed stuff inside of you. The next sign is you have been keeping yourself overly busy. Again, we need breaks from big emotions, and distracting and keeping ourselves busy can be good in doses. But when it's all the time, you're running around, you're racing around, you're never letting yourself have even a minute of quiet. And it's not just because you have a lot on your plate, it's because you are putting a lot on your plate because you don't want any empty spaces on your plate, because if you have that empty space, you don't know what to do because you fear that you're going to be swallowed by the grief and the pain. So you are keeping yourself overly scheduled and overly busy in order to avoid having any time to feel the pain of the grief. The next sign is that you might find that you have more pain or illness than usual because unprocessed grief is a stressor on our body. And we know that, I remember reading this stat, it was either 80 or 90% of all disease and illness is rooted in stress. And so then it's no surprise that if your body is going through the stress of grief, of unmanaged or unprocessed or undealt with grief, then you are going to get sick more often because your immune system is compromised. You're going to feel more pain because you are storing the stress and the strain in your body, and that is impacting your physical health. It's creating problems for you. So maybe you're like, I went through this significant loss 6 months ago and I've been dealing with really bad back pain or jaw pain or headaches for the last 6 months. Or I don't know why, I just keep getting colds. I keep getting every virus that's going around. I'm not someone that usually gets sick. That is going to be a clue. As I said, there is no one and done set linear process for dealing with grief, healing from grief, moving through grief. It is an up and down, it is a back and forth, but generally, if we are dealing with it properly or effectively, we are going to be going, I'm going to use this hand because it's my right hand, I'm right-handed, we're going to be going in an upward trajectory. Why do I have problems saying that word? We're going to be going in an upward trajectory. So there's going to be ups and downs in the grieving process, but you are working towards up. You are going in the upward trend. But if you are not dealing with it, you are probably staying steady or even going in a downward trend and spiraling down, and things are getting worse because of the behaviors that your brain is drawing you towards, compelling you to do to help manage that undealt with grief, the pain from it. So some of these behaviors, especially like the substance misuse, the avoidance behaviors, I mean, all of them are ones that if repeated over a long period of time can create even bigger problems for us. So going in a downward trend. So what do? We know that the difference between those who are able to move through their grief in an effective way are those who are willing to deal with and be with their grief. And the differences between those and those who avoid it almost completely. So here are 3 ways to start processing your grief. Actually, no, we have 4 ways to start processing your grief. I wrote 3, but then did a little more research, and we have 4. So the first one is to absolutely be good to yourself in your timeline. Not saying, oh my gosh, like I lost my parent 2 years ago and I'm still struggling with it. What's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. The thing that's happening is that you lost someone who was important to you, who you've known your whole life, and who maybe you were even really close with, and especially if you're close with them. And even if you're not, there can be all kinds of complicated things around losing someone who you had a complicated relationship with. But knowing that there's no shaming, there's no blaming, there's no, oh, you should be over it by now, oh, this shouldn't be bothering you still. As soon as we go into that, then we make ourselves feel worse. So we are going to commit to being good to ourselves and acknowledging that if I am feeling grief, then I am in the grieving process, and it comes with its ups and its downs, and it's all around. So I'm going to be good to myself, I'm going to be gentle with myself, and I'm going to get support in this. If that means joining a support group, if that means following accounts on social media that give helpful tips on processing grief, something that you can kind of use on a regular basis, little things that are going to help you in that journey. And also being a part of something so that you can really engage in this aspect of common humanity. It is incredible how powerful it is when we see other people like us going through something similar, like us, having the same experience as they are going through that thing as us. When we see ourselves as broken or flawed or weird or shaming ourselves for whatever it is, we are thinking or feeling that we somehow think that we shouldn't be thinking or feeling. When we see other people in that as well, then it creates this really this openness, like I'm not alone. I'm not weird. It's not just me. And so really getting that support, being around other people going through something similar, knowing that you're not alone there. So there's something very healing even in and of that self. That's why I have the membership community, the Shift Society. That's why I often do small coaching groups, small intimate coaching groups, so that people can be in that close-knit community and not feel alone. That is a huge, often overlooked part of the healing and growth process. So getting the support, especially when it comes up to some kind of significant date or anniversary around the loss. If it's getting support and someone coming with you to visit the grave, or if you're going to have some kind of little memorial ritual at home, doing that with someone, or even just doing that yourself to really just acknowledge that person that you lost. Being out in nature and helping regulate yourself, being with someone in nature as you work to regulate your emotions, as you're dealing with something really painful. And then, being with someone that you trust and feel safe with any kind of loss, any kind of significant, painful loss in your life, being supported around it, being able to open up and safely talk about it. That is going to be really helpful for you, and knowing that there are people in your life who want to be there for you. who want to support you through this, who want to just listen, and even being able to set them up for support by being like, hey, I don't need advice. I don't need you to fix it. I just need to talk about this. I just need you to listen. And that's all. And so that then sets the whole conversation up for success. So they're not like, I don't know what to say. What should I say? I don't know what to do. And then they feel all awkward. And then you can feel their awkwardness. So then you feel like you're burdening them. So then you don't want to talk about it. And it just becomes this whole thing. So setting them up for success, getting support, being good to yourself. That was one, but that was like a lot all in one. Not all of them are that intensive. But if you need to re-listen to number one again, because there was a lot in there, that you can just pause here, reverse, and watch it again. I almost said rewind, but we don't wind anymore. We don't wind anymore. There's no such thing as winding. It's all digital, so we just reverse. I'm getting with the times in my, elder millennial age. The next one is to be with the grief in small doses. Don't overwhelm yourself, and don't think that you need to be in grief all the time in order to process it better and faster. Exactly the opposite can be true. If you are emotionally overloaded all the time, it can be traumatizing for your body and for your brain if you're in intensive stress all the time. So don't try to do that. It's not more is better when it comes to grieving, but consistently and some is going to be helpful. So letting yourself be with the waves when they come up, and letting yourself breathe with them, letting yourself be with them, letting yourself journal about them, letting yourself just think about them and be in that feeling. It's okay to yell. It's okay to cry. It's okay to scream. It's okay to feel the flood of emotion without judgment. It's okay to just like sit and notice what this flood of emotion feels like in your body. Having that in small doses and letting the wave come and then the wave settle and then moving on with your day, continuing to live your life. Even if it might be hard, even if the grief is fresh, it's going to be really hard to continue living your life. But if you've got some space from it, knowing that even when you have some space from the event, grief still comes in those waves. So letting yourself ride the waves. You don't have to numb or avoid or repress them. Be with yourself through them. Just letting that rise and fall of the emotion. And when it starts to settle a little bit again, after you've cared for yourself through it, done what you needed to do as you move with and through it, then moving on and continuing on with your day and with your life and whatever else it is that's important to you. Do things in small doses. So in addition to being with your emotions, the big emotions in smaller doses, doing things that you need to do in smaller doses, especially if the grief is really fresh and the loss is really fresh and there's a lot of tasks that need to be done, paperwork, going through items, figuring out arrangements for different things, figuring out financial things, choosing what you want to keep, what you want to give away, doing things in small doses. If you've lost a job and it was a shocking loss, it was a really painful loss, as you come to, getting to a place where you can look for a new job, just doing it in small doses, if that's the capacity that you have. Whatever it is the loss, and the things that you need to deal with in the aftermath of the loss, letting yourself do it in small doses, not overloading or overwhelming yourself, because you already have, again, all of those emotions right up here. So there's no space to load a bunch of extra stuff on. If you do, you might find yourself breaking down or blowing up frequently because actually there's no space for a lot. So letting yourself pace yourself, doing a little bit, but still doing a little bit so that you're not avoiding it and then causing all the stress that comes with the compounding of avoiding everything. That's another stressor. So just doing a little bit at a time. Another really cool exercise that you can do, and this is backed by a type of theoretical orientation and counseling called narrative therapy that I have done some fairly extensive training on. And it's a really beautiful practice in grief called letter writing to the lost one. So someone that you lost through death, through a move, through a relationship ending in some way. And if there's something you want to say, if there's unfinished business, if there's stuff that's been on your heart, you can write a letter to that person with no intention of sending it, especially if it's someone that you've lost through death. You're not obviously going to be able to send it unless you've figured out some way to, bridge the earth heaven gap. But aside from that, writing a letter. You're allowed to do that. We think so often that we are only allowed to speak to people who are right in front of us, that we're only allowed to really think about people who are right in front of us. But if you think about any relationship that you've had in your life, a lot of that relationship resides in your head. What I mean by that is so much of that relationship involves thoughts that you have about the person, things that you did with the person, stuff you're looking forward to doing with the person, conversations you had with them. None of these things are happening in real time, but the relationship still exists without that person being right there in front of you. And so that can still be the same. If we have lost someone in our lives, we can still have sort of this element of relationship with them through whatever it is we want to think about with or when it comes to them. And if you've never really thought about that way before, consider it. Consider that the loss of the person doesn't have to mean the loss of any type of connection we feel to them. So being able, it's okay to, even if you want to sit down and have a conversation with them in your head. Not that you're, necessarily, unless you're into that, actually thinking that you're connecting with them on the other side, but just chat with them as you would have if they were alive. If you have something you want to say, something you want to tell them about, something you want to talk to them about, something that you want to express to them or confess to them, there can be really powerful cathartic experiences that can come from that. Even if there's someone too that you have unfinished business with, if you just want to write a letter, get it off your chest, process whatever it is, your thoughts, your feelings, what you've been carrying around aside, what you have been rehearsing in your head, what you've been feeling, what's been going on, get it out on a piece of paper. Even if you have no intention of ever sending it, that can be a really powerful emotion processing process. Be gentle with yourself. Grief is hard. Grief is confusing. Grief is not linear, and it is often very up and down. Dealing with it, starting with some of these tips, starting with one of these things, and making sure that you are getting support through it, and being supportive and compassionate, loving towards yourself in and through it. If you need to find some ways to be more grounded, feel just the ground underneath your feet, calm your mind, give your brain kind of a break from all of the swirling thoughts and feelings, then I have a 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise for you. That is a free audio. You can get it in the description below, get it right away, stick some headphones in and listen to that. And you're going to find, not everyone, depending on where you're at, brains are at different places about whether or not they're able to kind of do mindfulness or meditations, depending on where you're at, but give it a try. You will likely find that it'll give you a sense of peace and presence and calm. And if you haven't had that for a while, or if you're needing that right now, then that is available to you for free in the description below. And now let me know, what of these did you find helpful? Where are you at right now? What do you need most right now? Would love to hear from you. It's always good to be with you. Take good care of yourself. Take good care of those around you. And until next time, take good care.